An educated sailor by the name of Eudoxus arrived in Ptolemaic Egypt around 116 BC from the ancient port of Cyzicus. He climbed the Egyptian social ladder until reaching a circle that featured none other than the pharaoh and his closest advisors. In their company, Eudoxus floated the idea that he should lead an expedition down the Nile River. As it so often does, destiny held alternative plans. A mysterious foreigner was ushered into Pharaoh's presence. The soldiers by his side reported that they had found him on a ship, alone and half dead. At first they could not figure out who he was, where he came from, or the reason for his visit, as he spoke a language they could not understand. But after teaching the man Greek, he told them he came by open ocean from India, but lost his course during a violent storm, which ultimately dumped his vessel at the mouth of the Arabian Gulf. The ordeal caused his entire crew to die of starvation, and considering the condition he was found in, almost took his life as well. The man delivered a bold promise to Pharaoh. If he could be afforded the opportunity to return to his native country, he would point out to those sent with him by the king the route by sea to India. The economic upside proved worth the risk. Pharaoh sent Eudoxus with the Indian captain, as well as countless presents, which, upon arrival, were exchanged for rare fragrances and precious stones. One can presume the Indian captain chose to stay in his homeland. Eudoxus led the return voyage to Egypt, figuring the exotic riches aboard the ships would secure him a modest fortune. However, he was greatly deceived. Pharaoh took possession of the whole treasure. When he died, Cleopatra assumed the reins of the Egyptian government, and Eudoxus was again dispatched to India with an even greater cargo than before. He successfully navigated the journey to his destination, which made him the first man to establish direct maritime trade between the Mediterranean and South Asia. Like the aforementioned Indian captain, Eudoxus encountered strong winds on his return voyage. He was blown frightfully off course, and soon found himself sailing beside unknown lands. He beat a course north, and came to realize he was straddling the east coast of Africa. He mingled with natives on the trip home, and while ingratiating himself with one village over grain wine and cakes of pressed figs, he spotted something that appeared to be nothing out of the ordinary from a distance. Except, upon closer inspection, the artifact looked oddly familiar. It was a beautifully hand-carved wooden horse head that Eudoxus thought resembled those which decorated the end of some ships' prows. But it couldn't be. He was recognized as the man who discovered the open sea route to India, while financed by one of the most powerful and educated monarchs on earth, the Pharaoh of Egypt. If anybody, he would have at least heard rumors of an expedition that penetrated so deep into the unknown world. Nonetheless, the indigenous people confirmed his suspicions, adding, "The piece belonged to a foreign ship found wrecked on their shores long ago. They believed the vessel came from the west." Eudoxus was bewildered. How could a ship of Mediterranean origin be right before his eyes? He promptly assumed possession of the artifact. After returning to Egypt, Eudoxus once again got betrayed by the monarchy. First of all, on arrival, he realized Cleopatra no longer ruled. Her son did. While meeting the new pharaoh, he was, to his horror, deprived of any earnings he planned on receiving. The king accused him of stealing quite a bit from the cargo, which could have been the case. Perhaps Eudoxus was the kind of guy who appreciated a good time, and over a few too many bottles of wine with the African tribesmen, lost track of the goods that were consumed or gifted. He was at least permitted to keep his obscure wooden horse head. He took it to port city marketplaces, showcasing the object to passers-by, hoping somebody would recognize its origin. Many sailors felt the craftsmanship was reminiscent of work done in the Morocco area. They suggested it came from small ships the people there labeled horses, that these small vessels were occasionally used for fishing voyages around the Strait of Gibraltar, along the Atlantic-facing West African coast. Some of the shipmasters even recognized that exact wooden horse head as having belonged to a ship that sailed too far south down the coast and never returned home safely. The imagination of the explorer Eudoxus was on fire, who, mind you, had a career in jeopardy on the heels of falling out of good graces with the Egyptian monarchy. He connected dots. This wooden horse had originated in Morocco. Ships regularly sailed and occasionally disappeared south along the west coast of Africa. The East African tribesmen who found the wooden horse head claimed its vessel came from the west. This could only mean one thing. Africa was surrounded by water. He could sail a southwesterly course around the continent starting from the Strait of Gibraltar, venture east through the open ocean to India, and reap the profits of his monopoly on direct trade relations with civilizations there, all without having to revisit his soured relations with the Egyptians. It's worth noting, he probably severely underestimated how far south the African continent extended. There's the classic saying, what you don't know won't hurt you. Eudoxus of Cyzicus went home, sold everything he had to his name, built the largest ship he could, as well as 2 supporting towboats, and sailed off into the Mediterranean sunset. He stopped at ancient ports hugging the coast, from Sicily, Italy, to Marseille, France, to Cadiz, Spain, collecting a vibrant cast of characters along the way. The melting pot crew included singing girls, doctors, and artists of all sorts. He promised them revolutionary adventures beyond the Pillars of Heracles, historic circumnavigation of the African continent, lands, beasts, and ocean never before seen by man, and most importantly, riches resulting from rare trade with untapped Indian sources. All aboard, the Adventure Express was carried into the Atlantic Ocean by favorable westerly winds. But Eudoxus's star-studded crew quickly grew weary of the voyage's physical and mental demands. They forced him against his will to sail closer to land, which he really didn't want to do because he feared the ebb and flow of the tides. Indeed, his greatest fear came true. The ship ran aground, though so gently it was not broken up all at once, and they managed to safely transfer all the cargo, aka Eudoxus's entire life savings, to land. Dude was probably so angry. But hey, a mutiny's a mutiny. Using the salvageable wood from his ships, Eudoxus constructed a boat large enough to accommodate 50 oars and continued his voyage. While making land someplace, he met an African tribe that spoke a language similar to the one he encountered so long ago on his rough return voyage from India. The indigenous people described themselves as neighbors to the kingdom of Bocchus, who was likely the king of Mauritania at the time, Bocchus I. Mauritania was in present-day Morocco. Suddenly, Eudoxus abandoned his current voyage and turned back toward the Mediterranean. But before reaching the Strait of Gibraltar, he documented the location of a well-watered and well-wooded island. In Morocco, he disposed of his boats, traveled on foot to the court of King Bocchus, and advised him to take up this expedition on his own account. Given the drastic course of events, perhaps the African tribe he stumbled upon had a personal connection to the king, and offered to introduce Eudoxus to him. Eudoxus may have figured he could offer the king a cut of the riches in exchange for financing. While details were ironed out, he could resupply and reconstruct his ships and ditch unsavory crew members. Things started to get weird in Morocco, though. The vibes were off. Aristocrats warned the king their country could be exposed to new attacks by outsiders, certainly once they developed a craving for Moroccan treasures. Regardless, the king agreed to sponsor the voyage. However, before long, Eudoxus caught wind of some sort of assassination plot. He heard he was being sent on the expedition only to be marooned on some desert island. Fearing for his life, he fled Morocco, crossed the Strait of Gibraltar, and found refuge in Roman territory. Once in modern-day Spain, Eudoxus built another ship of 50 oars, as well as a smaller round ship for exploring the coast. Having garnered a greater understanding for the breadth of his endeavor, he gathered agricultural implements, seeds, and carpenters on board, then set out once more into the sunset. This time, should Africa's circumnavigation be delayed, he was prepared to spend winter on the island he previously observed. Plant seeds there, reap the harvest, and when favorable, continue the voyage. This is where Eudoxus sails off the edge of the historical record, never to be heard of again. The famous Greek intellectual Poseidonus suggests if anybody knew what had happened to him, it would be the people of Cadiz, Spain. Did Eudoxus circumnavigate Africa and complete another voyage to India as he planned? Did he go down in a blaze of glory whilst battling unforgiving waters, which battered his soul to the ocean floor, where a locker, courtesy of Davy Jones, always awaited? Or did he find a nice plot of land and maybe even a lady somewhere and live out the rest of his years in peace? Feel free to share what you think in the comment section below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.